Well, let's have a look at the papers this morning with Patrick Strudwick and Vicky Beeching. Morning, both.
Morning.
Good morning.
We'll kick off, Patrick, with the front of the Sunday Times, should we? And Mark Harper.
This is beyond parody, really. So Immigration Minister Mark Harper has had to resign because he's realised that his cleaner, which, by the way, taxpayers pay for, doesn't have the right to live in this country. And this, of course, is the minister who has helped usher in the new immigration bill. And one of its central tenets is that landlords and employers have to be responsible for ensuring that either their tenants or their employees have the right to live in this country. So, I mean, it's rank hypocrisy. Which this exposes, and it also exposes the ludicrousness of this bill. The idea that we should be responsible. I, for example, am a landlord and I have a lodger. Am I really supposed to do detailed background checks on my lodgers? That's not my job. I'm not. I don't work for the UKBA, the border agency. It's not workable, and he has exposed how unworkable it is. And, you know, by the way, he claimed this cleaning on expenses, so even in 1 year, that cost taxpayers over £1,000. Not a great deal of money, but the whole thing stinks, and it makes a laughingstock of the government and this bill. They're in a mess.
I mean, he has had to admit, though, that he actually followed the law to the letter. He asked the lady for all the paperwork. She presented it. I mean, it does raise the question, if he could be fooled, goodness, who couldn't? But he, as a man walking through the steps of integrity, did actually follow the letter of the law. So I think it is quite honourable that he's resigned.
But no, but he didn't follow it through properly, because when she first started working for him 7 years ago, he asked to see her passport and papers, and she presented him with a letter from the Home Office claiming, saying that she had indefinite leave to remain. Well, you know, I'm not an immigration minister. I'm a mere journalist, and I know that when someone has indefinite leave to remain, they have a slip in their passport saying that. If he doesn't know that...
That is a very good point.
Well, I mean, she could have said that the further documentation was pending, because there is a period between which you get the letter and you actually get that document in.
And the fact that he didn't follow that up shows that he's lazy, that he doesn't know how to... he doesn't know how the system works himself, and he doesn't care enough about it to even look after his own backyard. Yet he expects us to be responsible for our employees or our tenants.
But he has said he holds himself to a higher standard, which I think, as a phrase, actually is quite refreshing.
He hasn't even held himself to an equal standard.
Any minister say they hold themselves to a higher standard is a good thing.
People being deceitful, though, can you?
No. He did all he could. I think he did all he could. My gut feeling is that
he lost this paperwork, and he didn't check for another 7 years.
But he has
He did check twice, and he has stepped down.
He has resigned.
Quite right too. But the fact that he's saying that he demands of himself, you know, a higher level than us. But he's not even at the level that he's expecting of us, because he's expecting tenants, landlords, and employers to check the immigration status. It also shows how it's not that easy.
It does show that. I mean, if he can't follow his own rules, then what hope do we have?
Well, let's move on to the world of comedy from that.
Yes.
It's a beautiful segue.
Hopefully more funny and more positive. I don't know about you, but often I'll watch comedy shows on TV and just despair at the lack of women that are represented. I know sometimes it can be difficult, they say, to find women who say yes to these shows, but it's really great news. Danny Cohen, head of the BBC's Output, is promising that they're not actually going to make any more shows that are all male. And obviously comes from last year, the BBC Trust's recommendations, but Danny Cohen saying he's really going to recommit himself to this, that we shouldn't have to watch programmes like that anymore where women aren't represented, and I think that is fantastic.
Patrick?
Indeed, and I wonder why it's not rolled out into all discussion shows. I mean,
we need to... What should we do tomorrow, though? Axe loose women, because there are no men in it.
But in terms of representation, the balance, I mean, to have a few all-women shows is nothing in compared to the general historicity of male shows that have dominated. I think you need a few all-women shows just to you know, have the pendulum swing in the right direction.
It is particularly noticeable on comedy shows, but political discussion programmes, there's still much more men. Even on the BBC, there's a lot more men.
Well, they do mention in this that Question Time has been improving, and having kept an eye on it, I would say it's improving slowly. I mean, there are more women, but it's still nowhere near equal, is it?
No, I mean, my impression of Question Time is 30 to 40% women, and let's not forget it is 51% of the population. Men are actually a minority, and yet they are a majority on television.
It's true. Well, I'm excited for this, and it quotes people like Victoria Wood and Jo Brand, who have actually said they don't want to appear on these shows unless they have equal representation, which is good, because I think people have to start really speaking up within their field, don't they? And female comedians saying, we need this to change. It's a boys' club, they say. It feels like a real kind of macho boys' club atmosphere when you go on those sets, so the culture's got to change.
OK, let's have a look at talk of women. Vivienne Westwood is... oh, here she is, in her T-shirt.
Yes, I mean, I sort of have a lot of time for her in some regards, because she's, you know, a real great British eccentric, bit barking, love that. But, and here she is, she's saying that she's not going to expand her business, that she's going to rein it in because of her beliefs in the importance of ethical fashion. Unfortunately, ethical fashion is an oxymoron because the very nature of fashion is on really quantity over quality, which is the opposite of what she's trying to aim for here. The fact that we have, you know, 2 seasons every year, and every 6 months we are told to buy new products because the old ones are no longer acceptable. You know, the very industry is based on a premise which is unethical, which is, you know, as if the planet is unending in its supply of all kinds of natural resources. So I'm pleased that she's making the right sounds and saying the right things, but I don't really see how you can be a fashion designer and really live up to your own principles.
Has she designed this T-shirt, do we think?
That T-shirt is a Greenpeace T-shirt, which she is supporting.
It's about climate change, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to kind of use your clothes to promote a message, but I think I really agree with Patrick that the kind of underlying ethos of the fashion industry is very unethical. You look at the cheap clothing, you know, the whole kind of all the different companies and the collapse of the sweatshop factories. I just think everybody is so keen to have that sort of cycle of replacing things every season, whatever their budget, that you get to a point where you can't afford to do that unless you're charging, you know, £5, £10 an item, which is just wrong.
I've got to leave it there, Patrick. And then we're going to have to zip him up.
Save it.
And we've got more coming up for you in just a moment. Stay with us. So we're looking at the papers with Patrick and with Vicky. Let's log our lives, Vicky, should we, in the Observer Tech section this morning?
Yeah, this is very interesting. So a little kind of roundup here in the Observer about the different bits of wearable technology that are becoming popular. It's going to be a really big part of this year. Wearable tech is kind of a new level, really, of figuring out what you do in terms of exercise, in terms of sleep, calorie intake, and you can find out as much as you want to know, basically. I've been testing it out with one of those up bands that are pictured there.
Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry. There you go.
Lovely, and it tells me how much sleep I get, how many hours REM sleep versus light sleep, how many steps I take, and my conclusion on all of it is that I became much more aware of what I did. They recommend you should get 10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Since I started
don't want to know how
you know,
lazy I am.
It tells you how lazy you are, and then you can rectify it.
No, I don't need someone to tell me that I should get off my fat arse and do something.
You could live longer.
Language, Patrick.
You could live longer and feel better. I've honestly, I've gone from walking about 2,000 steps a day to 10,000 just because I'm so competitive.
But does it tell you
what
your
make this thing work? You know?
Does it tell you what your optimum sleep time should be? Or it just tells you what you're sleeping
doesn't.
Anyway?
Some of them do.
So I don't see the benefit of that then.
Do you know how much REM you're supposed to have? Because I have no idea what's good and what's bad.
I think in the booklet you can look that up.
It does wake you. I mean, see, mind you, that looks exactly like mine. Except mine's broken at the minute and it hasn't been replaced yet. But I've noticed a difference from not had it for about a month now. And I do notice it because it wakes you up at the right point.
Yeah, and it will vibrate. So if you don't want to wake up anyone else, it will just wake you up silently, basically. And it wakes you up at the right moment. So it will pick when you're in a light, you know, when you sometimes wake up and you're like, whoa, where was I? It will pick a light moment in your sleep cycle.
But can it stop you having anxiety dreams? I think that's what
we can't do everything.
No, it can't do everything.
It can't actually fix everything
Guys,
in your life.
we're out of time.
Almost.
But you're back in an hour. We'll look forward to that. But let's see what Charlie's found on the back page.